right, so I'm going to get started. I really want to thank all my friends for coming out tonight. Look around, I see all the principals that are here. I see some students from Western Albemarle High School. That's really cool. Mary's back there in the back. I see Ned Galloway, Chair of the Board of Supervisors, and Diantha McKeel is also here. Lots of central office staff. It's really cool, especially on a night like tonight. I really appreciate you all coming out. And the reward, well, this should be relatively brief compared to previous funding request presentations. It still seems kind of loud, Jennifer. Is it kind of loud? A little echoey? All right. Okay. So good evening, everyone. I really appreciate the time provided tonight for me to present the superintendent's funding request for Albemarle County Public Schools for the coming 2019-2020 school year. Before I get started, I want to be sure and specifically thank Rosalind Schmidt, Maya Kumazawa, Jackson Zimmerman, and Lindsay Harris for your very hard work under a lot of pressure to produce the funding request. I'm also very grateful to our superintendent's cabinet for your leadership, creativity, and strong thoughts throughout our proposal and prioritizing process. And of course, thank you, Jennifer Butler, who's here with me tonight after I begged her, for putting in a lot of time and energy into the slideshow and capturing the theme so well with your graphics. You really are so creative. Thank you. Phil and Jennifer, also Jennifer, you did a heck of a job with framing up the funding request notebooks and scheduling the press conference this afternoon and all the present and future opportunities for me to talk about our funding request. I really appreciate it. I think what we have here in a funding request to operate the school division next year will not be a surprise to you, the board, as it is needs-based and based on our strategic plan. The board's biennial priorities for 2018-2020 and the conversations we've been having regarding addressing students' well-being and success through a focus on equity. This year's funding request is titled Albemarle Rising, to signify the importance and the value of the connection between our school division, our county's business and service communities, and the future prosperity of our students. What is good for our schools is even better for the county. It recognizes the progress and innovation that have fueled high student academic achievement overall, but as the verb tense indicates, it is a journey that's not yet complete. We have important work to do, especially in lifting the performance of every student and every demographic group throughout our division. I hope to have a brief presentation this evening to provide an overview. Our schedule for the next few meetings is set so that you will get much more detail about our proposals and strategies, as well as opportunities to ask questions about them. And of course, after the presentation, you will have your notebooks. At the core of our work as a school division and at the core of this funding request is our strategic plan. With our mission, vision, values, and student-centered goal as our framework, we move forward with greater focus on the board's 3 strategic priorities. And they are creating a culture of high expectations for all, identifying and removing practices that perpetuate the achievement gap, and ensuring that students identify and develop personal interests. In alignment with this focus, our 2019-20 funding request builds upon last year's equity and opportunity theme and moves us toward lifting all students by reinforcing successful strategies, adding specific resources where needed in alignment with the strategic objectives, and setting measurements in place for evaluation from the start. As we reflect on our strategic direction, we imagine what the world will be like when our entering kindergarten students graduate and what skills they will need to thrive in the future. For Albemarle County Public Schools, our destination is a place where every graduate leaves our schools prepared for a lifetime of learning in a changing world. Our destination can also be described as a place where every child, every family, has a seat at the table of prosperity in Albemarle County and in Albemarle County schools. We have 5 strategic objectives that will get us there. And it is these objectives that have shaped the funding request. And they are more than that. How will we meet these objectives will determine how well we do next year in meeting the expectations of our community, that our schools be significant contributors to their quality of life. These objectives include student engagement, balanced and therefore more relevant and meaningful assessments of student progress, expanding opportunities and student achievement, creating and adding to our community partnerships, and making the most efficient use of our resources. The strategic plan is like our compass, and we use several other sources of information to help find our funding request direction. Now, I have to say that Jennifer Butler put the graphic on this slide, and she told me she wanted it to look like me. It's close, but I asked her to make more accurate by removing most of the hair on the back of my head, of the caricature's head, and she refused to do that. And also, I think I'm a little more thin than that character, but they say that slide decks add on 10 pounds or something. But most of the sources listed here are familiar to you. You've seen that before. I must say that my listening tour this summer and the preparation of the 100-day report really did help me to see the division with new eyes after 14 years here doing the work. I want to thank the hundreds of people who shared their thoughts about Albemarle County Public Schools with me, either in person, online, or through our survey. You gave me marching orders for the next several years and immediate priorities for next year. Also, thank you to all of our staff, students, parents, and community members for taking time to fill out our budget survey. In addition to some informational questions, we asked for priorities from our stakeholders. The following 5 were the top priorities. And we don't ask the question about class size because that's always the top priority. So we just assume that it's there, and believe me, we prioritized class sizes in the funding request. But the next 5 are competitive salaries to attract and retain high-quality teachers, increasing student health and wellness services, competitive salaries to attract and retain high-quality support staff, physical safety and security measures for students and staff in our school buildings, and increasing career and workforce readiness opportunities such as internships for high school students. And thank goodness for our employee, parent, and student advisory groups. Our up-close and personal conversations with these stakeholders are often the most informative and compelling. As we often say in relation to our costs, public education is a people business. So the biggest driver in our funding request is compensation and benefits for teachers and classified staff, which represents 85% of our funding request. Along with compensation increases recommended to the Board of Supervisors and School Board in October for teachers and classified staff. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that Doug Walker's here tonight from the county's executive staff. Thanks for coming, Doug. Yeah. We are recommending some substantive shifts in bus driver compensation and benefits as we continue to see a shortage of applicants and have a difficult time with retention of bus drivers. Growth is another driving factor in the Albemarle County Schools funding request. We are part of the 30% of Virginia localities that is growing instead of shrinking, and families and businesses come here because of our schools. We began our planning with more than 70 proposals from employees that are and also from our advisory groups, student advisory groups, parents, and employees that are aligned with the board's strategic priorities. And as we dug deeper into how closely they fit our objectives and how effectively they can be tracked and measured, we narrowed our list down to the 20 that I'm going to be sharing tonight. And if and when we need to trim the funding request as we make our way through the process, we can go back to the rankings to make strategic decisions. The proposals you will see on the next slides were top-ranked proposals by the cabinet and do not include mandated funding increases. I will note that the budget work sessions that are coming up are structured by strategic objectives and the proposals rather than by our traditional approach of having departmental reviews. I will not go into a great amount of detail about these proposals, as you will have much more time later and much more detail in your budget notebooks, and you will hear more about them and have a chance to ask questions in our forthcoming board meetings. So this slide and the following subset of slides shows our 20 funding request proposals as they align with the board's 5 strategic objectives. For example, this slide states the commitment that we will engage every student, we have included 4 proposals to increase our students' engagement through more focused professional development and special programming, creation, and expansion. In italics above the proposals, we have identified what each proposal is catalyzing or facilitating. For example, we are growing choices and opportunities in contemporary high school programming through our high school center expansion and bringing back the JROTC program to Monticello High School, which should have a greater student population now that we have a transportation model that supports students attending it from across the county. Also under Objective 1 is one of the top-ranked proposals by the Cabinet, a proposal that expands our equity specialist staffing to address an increasing demand for high-quality, cultural responsive teaching practices, professional development, and training. We only have one proposal under consideration aligned with our commitment to implement balanced assessments. Based on my assessment of school division operations, I am learning that we have been trying to have greater balance in our assessments without really deciding up front how we will use the data to inform student learning at the division level. Further, like most organizations that collect data, we are data rich with employee information, finance information, assessment and grade information, enrollment, attendance, school bus cycles, you name it, and almost none of it is integrated to help us make better decisions. One of the first things that Dr. Diggs proposed as part of her transition plan is to acquire a data reporting system and a data reporting specialist to straddle instruction and operations to analyze all the various data and build systems for greater access to meaningful information about our school system and our students. We know that one of the key factors in student learning is the student's social and emotional well-being. Providing a safe and stable environment helps to take down barriers to student achievement and helps teachers, support staff, and administrators create and maintain a positive climate. All of these proposals listed under our commitment to improve opportunity and achievement are specific to student well-being and safety. You will hear more about these proposals in the future meetings, but I'll highlight a couple. One, I think, is a very creative approach upon which we are placing a very small bet. We're calling it the First School Pilot Program. And I of course give credit to Debbie Collins. This is her baby. But what we're looking at is we know through research at the national level that when a child moves from a primary age child moves from one elementary school to another during the course of the year, it can often have an impact of up to 30% of the growth that they've had in learning lost. And as we analyze the data among the 3 urban ring schools from last year, we see that there were 27 students that, after the school year started, moved from one school to another, or moved from one school to another and then another, or moved from one school to another and then back. So you can imagine those students like pinballs bouncing off the bumpers, but instead of getting more points, they lose points every time they hit one of the bumpers. So we know that there were 5 kindergartners that did this. So what we're planning on doing is next year to offer to the families of those students that would move among the urban ring, those 3 schools, because they're really only about 7 minutes apart on a good traffic day, that what we would say is your child may stay put here at this school, and we will come up with an individualized plan for that. The other piece is that the students would meet criteria to be able to stay at the school that would include risk factors, like being economically disadvantaged, or perhaps the student is not where they need to be in terms of reading readiness. Other kinds of factors like that would help us determine as to whether the child would stay put. We wouldn't make them stay put if they didn't want to. And oftentimes the parents can provide transportation. If they can't, then we would look at an individualized plan to include a taxi service like some of our schools currently use for some of their students that don't have transportation, or some other means like that. Part of the reason why we want to do a small study is so we can see how well it works in comparison to similar students from years past that haven't had this benefit, and then we can decide whether we would make a bigger investment in it. That's a very creative idea. The second is a complete paradigm shift that will require a great deal of time and energy, but it'll be well worth it. The gifted education program changes that we are looking at require us to move from the paradigm that there are a few children, roughly 10% of our students, 82% of whom are white, with specific gifts that we need to provide extra time and support. We will move to a new paradigm that every single child has a gift that we can support with attention and encouragement. Students or academic outliers will always be supported through accelerated programming, and let's begin looking for gifted behaviors that all students can develop rather than only looking for gifted individuals. In alignment with our objective to create and expand partnerships, for our students to graduate having actively mastered the lifelong learning skills they need to succeed as 21st century learners, workers, and citizens, we must facilitate and or provide the meaningful work-based or community-based learning experience that is right for each student. And we must do this for each and every student prior to graduation. For this to happen, we must have partners, more partners than we have now or have imagined thus far. To facilitate more than 1,000 experiences for our students annually, we will need an infrastructure that we have not yet established to do that. One that will connect students with mentors, employers, nonprofits, schools, and other providers of experience, and we must cultivate a symbiotic relationship with them. We are in the process of seeking the right work-based learning management tool to help us make this a reality. Also, by upgrading our website management system away from the SharePoint, which anybody who uses that to update information or do any work within it would say it's clunky, to say the least, that we need a better program that is more accessible and user-friendly for school and division staff. We will have a better web presence, more easily accessed and updated information for our students, employees, and families, as well as a greater exchange with partners. We will build our pool of partners and create more and more opportunities for our students to have the work and community-based learning experiences essential for their preparation for their first occupation during and beyond high school. And so here we come to possibly the least glamorous of our proposals for funding. Where's Rosalind? Can I say it? All right, I'm going to say it. They say that muscle is not built in the weight room. Right, Dr. Hairston?
Yes, sir.
Where's it built?
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen, that's right. You don't build muscle in the weight room, you build it in the kitchen. And this is the kitchen. This is where all the cooking happens. Great stuff happens out in the schools. We've got fantastic teachers, but somebody's got to hire them. We got funding for resources, but someone has to figure out where that funding's coming from and where it's going, right? So just remember that. You know, we've invested, as a school system, we have invested deeply and richly in our instructional staff. I would hold up our instructional staffing to any other division around the state, and our class sizes really are second to none, okay? And we can hold those things in place, but we also need to start making some more investments in the kitchen, where the muscle gets built. It takes a lot to get to the point where we have high quality instruction in the classrooms. And as I've transitioned into my current job, I've found that there are needs in a few of our support areas that we have left unaddressed for a long time. And these needs show up in our student results. Everything we do and who we have doing it in areas of support find their way to the students, don't they? I'm going to address just a couple of these items, but they're all very important to me. I'm requesting $645,000 to increase the compensation of our bus drivers. We are in the unenviable position of competing with several other transportation service providers with among the lowest salaries for drivers. We have struggled with substantial shortages in recruiting and retaining drivers. Lately we've been celebrating because we only have 6 vacancies. You know, that's not something we would have celebrated in the past. And most of the fall we've had 14 vacancies in our bus driving fleet. As a result, it has been necessary to reduce extracurricular transportation services such as field trips and after-school tutoring. It also results in longer ride times for students, as much as 30 minutes in some cases. That's neither an effective nor an efficient use of resources. We also have faced shortages in another key area, substitute teachers in the classroom. That is especially disruptive to learning when teacher absences occur at the last minute. This request asks for $108,000 to begin phasing in a program that would bring retired teachers back into the classroom as substitutes and create a permanent cadre of highly experienced educators to maintain a high level of student learning. Another relatively modest and innovative proposal is to reduce the tuition that we charge for children of our teachers who live outside the county. Currently, tuition can be as much as $5,500 for one of those children to come into our system. We would reduce that to $1,000. This would keep highly qualified teachers in our classrooms over the long term instead of having them leave because they cannot afford a home in the county or to pay tuition to have their child attend schools in the division in which they work. We have a competitive market with 26 other school divisions. Of that market, the last time I checked a few years ago, 13 of those divisions allowed their employees to bring in their children from outside for no tuition. And that includes Charlottesville City Schools. So if I'm a highly skilled special ed teacher or a really good math teacher or any really one of our great teachers, and I'm coming from Louisa or Orange, and the city doesn't charge any tuition, and we do, an exorbitant amount, I think, I'm going to take my children and go over to the city and help them with their teaching shortage. And right now we have 24 teachers that, 24 teachers that use this. And $1,000 when we did the research last time was kind of the break-off point to where it started to grow. Like when you got below 1,000, you started to see significant people saying they would take advantage of it. So that's why we chose that amount, because it would still be a nominal amount. In terms of the financial analyst, the Fiscal Services Department currently has only one budget analyst to serve both the budget process through the Director of Budget and Planning, as well as management, reporting, and supporting of operations in conjunction with the school finance officer. A second analyst would meet the needs to build, report, and analyze the financial and operational process for the division. And probably more importantly, it would also give greater, much-needed support to staff across the entire division on the financial and operational components of everyday needs that impact schools, departments, and special revenue funds. You'll hear more about each of these proposals in the meetings to come. This slide summarizes the staffing and operational funding needed for all 20 of the proposals aimed toward advancing the board's 5 strategic objectives with a total cost of $2.6 million. Before we pared them down from 70, it was about $6 million. I'm very proud to say that SMART goals for each proposal are provided in the budget notebook. So when you get your budget notebook and open it up, these proposals will be there, but they'll also have goals with them. I know that's one thing the board has talked about, is having things in place before we start to do the work. So we've used a logic model approach. We asked each proposal owner to develop goals for implementation of the proposal, including the inputs that are needed to be in place immediately to set the proposal up for success, activities that should happen during the first semester of the year, and short-term and long-term outputs. Each proposal will be evaluated based on progress with these SMART goals, and a determination will be made as to adjusting, expanding, or abandoning the strategy before it's funded again. Here's where we stand right now in terms of revenues from our various revenue sources. Revenues are projected at $193.7 million. This is based on an increase at the local level of 3.9% to $138 million. State revenues will be 5% higher at $50.7 million, and federal aid will remain relatively flat at $3 million. The state is providing 26% of our per pupil costs. Prior to the recession, the state was supporting as much as 32% of these costs. If the state had continued to provide even 30% of per pupil costs, we would be receiving an additional $7.3 million in revenues. And this is where we must say thank you to our Board of Supervisors members, especially Diantha and Ned that are here tonight. I hope you're listening when I say thank you. Got to say thank you. And to the taxpayers, the local taxpayers. The lion's share of residents in Albemarle County are not children in our schools and do not have children in our schools. But you support the work of the school system through your property valuations and taxes. On behalf of our children and their families and our employees, I thank you for making our important work possible. Our 2019-20 funding request totals approximately $194.3 million, which is an increase over the current year of about $7.5 million, a budget-to-budget increase of just over 4%. A total of 85% of these expenditures are for employee compensation and benefits. This includes $2 million to fund a 2.3% raise for teachers and a $1 million increase for a 2.3% plus merit increase for classified staff. That was agreed to last year by the school board and the board of supervisors. Our 2019-20 funding request contains a total revenue increase of $6.88 million, an increase in expenditures totaling approximately $7.53 million, and currently the funding difference between the expenditures and revenues is $642,975, less than 1% of the total request. So, as we enter the home stretch of this presentation, we're getting there. Let's touch base one more time on the strategic priorities for the school board and for Albemarle County Public Schools. Metaphorically, these are three boats we're looking at. We're looking to lift them. They are very targeted, and by focusing energy and resources on these three priorities, we can lift all the boats, and we can impact many other facets of the student experience for all students and employees in Albemarle County Schools. In so many ways, Albemarle County Public Schools is a successful school system. Across these four high-value metrics, we are outperforming Virginia. There was a time several years ago when we were not outperforming the rest of the state average in these areas. But through focused effort and strategic planning, we have made great strides, especially in our graduation rate and in our dropout rate. These are successes of which we should be very proud, and they are pre-K through 12 successes. They're outcomes, but they start all the way in pre-K with the work that goes on in students that enter there. And according to the niche ranking, an organization that rigorously analyzes dozens of public data sets and over 100 million reviews and survey responses to understand what a place is really like, our school division is ranked third best out of 131 public school divisions in Virginia and among the top 2% in the nation. That's amazing. And while we have good resources and plenty of support, you, our people, our teachers, our support staff, our school board, and of course our administrators make it all happen. I think we are a largely successful school system, but as part of our mission, I'm going to continue to put something that needs to be on the table. For the most part, our diverse students of color, specifically African American students and Latino students, are not as successful as I believe they can be in Albemarle County Public Schools. While they are just as capable of and excited about learning and growing, and there are bright spots in our data, these students are not learning the Virginia curriculum as well as their white peers by just about any measure that we use. While I'm showing our performance on the Virginia SOL test for reading, if I showed our data for any subject area, as a whole, we are either on par with or below the state average, which in my opinion is the equivalent to a C+ average. And I don't think we are a C+ school system or C+ county. And it's not just about SOL tests. African American and Latino students are not showing up in our advanced classes and enrichment opportunities as well as their white peers, and they are suspended from school at a greater rate than their white peers. This is not a problem unique to Albemarle County Public Schools. This really is an American problem. I believe that American public schools is a beautiful idea. It is a noble cause. It is a beautiful idea and a powerful force for good. It is a perfect idea that we are so far implementing imperfectly. Despite what we most often see on the news or social media, conditions in our nation are mostly improving for people who have been marginalized throughout our nation's history. However, discrimination against diverse peoples of color is still deeply ingrained in American culture. Whether we call it racism or systemic bias, it results in inequitable opportunities for African American and Latino students. You can see on this slide that we are performing well below state averages with students in special populations. Clearly, while we are striving for equity with greater focus and specific and measured strategies, the strategies that we've outlined in this funding request, we can be more successful with these students and thus all of our students. And I want to take a moment here as we move toward the end to highlight a couple of our students and their accomplishments. This is an example of investing in students, sometimes one student at a time, and when those students are successful, they turn their success to everyone around them and make them part of it. While these students are exceptional, they represent what happens when our outstanding educators connect with young people, encourage them, and foster their talents and interests. So here pictured in this slide is Sadie Carfagno. She's a Western Albemarle High School senior. She's a member of the Environmental Science Academy, and she's also one of our pioneers at Student Center 1 at Seminole Place. I asked Sadie to tell us a teacher with whom she would like to share the spotlight, but she couldn't just choose one. She had more than one favorite. When we asked if she'd like to be photographed with, instead she chose 3. David Glover, the head teacher at Center 1, Jennifer Wayne, Sadie's French teacher at Western Albemarle, and Adam Mulcahy, director of our Environmental Studies Academy. Sadie actually had a lot to say about each of these amazing educators, but I'll share just what she said about the 3 collectively. Sadie has a lot to say. I chose these 3 teachers, this is her now. I chose these 3 teachers because they have all given me lessons and learning skills that, in my opinion, exceed the curriculum content and will serve me well for the rest of my life. They're all very passionate about what they do, and their energy and love for the subjects they teach is very clear. These teachers center their lessons around the importance of learning their subjects. It is clear their profession is not simply a job to them, but a mission. To them, teaching students material is not simply the end goal. Instead, it is about offering students the chance to see learning as a part of life, and that the love of the learning process is important as the material. When things get challenging, these teachers are there to help us fight obstacles and to work to provide the best opportunities for students to succeed. This extra effort they choose to share is what makes them some of the best teachers. They have filled my learning experiences with little adventures and good memories. You want to roll the footage?
The type of learning is making its way to Albemarle County. No bells, no letter grades, and no tests. But students are still learning, and some say they're more interested than ever. NBC 29's Megan Moriarty joins us live in studio with details on this new curriculum. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Casey. Albemarle Tech is a new pilot program for high school seniors. It's a hands-on work environment that allows students to negotiate their grades with teachers and work on projects that matter to them. Hands-on learning, creative minds,
I think this one's one of my favorites.
and big ideas are what you can find inside Albemarle Tech.
It's real world experience, it's hands-on, it's based around interest, it's so much more efficient and more meaningful to me than a worksheet or a packet.
The 21 students here are seniors from around Albemarle County looking to learn in a new way.
What's nice is that there's no bell schedules so that I can, go with my flow, crank out as much work as possible and, get it done as efficiently as possible and in my own kind of way.
Sadie spends 2 days a week at what you might call her second school to explore her 2 favorite subjects, art and science.
Basically, you can take all your different interests and things that in a traditional system would be sectioned into different classes. You can combine them to form really cool projects and learn a whole bunch of cool things at the same time.
She's working on medical illustrations for a book that will be donated to pediatric patients.
My main character's name is going to be Noah.
It will serve as a tool to explain critical diseases to young children.
Surgery can be kind of a scary time for them, so I'm making a children's book to explain the science of the health condition, but in an engaging, fun, visual way for them to understand it.
The center doesn't give students A's or B's for their hard work. Instead, students are graded based on how they take multiple ideas, learn to put them together, and solve problems.
In the real world, there are problems and there are no answers yet, and you want to be innovative. And at Albemarle Tech, you can be innovative and learn how to be creative when solving problems and doing projects.
Carfagno already has 2 scholarship offers from the university. She credits her hard work to Albemarle Tech. If all goes well, the county hopes to expand this pilot program to 60 students. Later down the road, it's hoping to build a center to accommodate 600.
All right, Megan Moriarty live for us tonight. Thank you, Megan.
The next student I want to introduce you to, if you haven't met him, is Marquand Jones. I first met Marquand, he was probably about this tall. He was in Dr. Hairston's Math Cube program at Burley, and it's been fun, really fun to watch him grow up over the years. He's one of our avid students, and he went to Jack Jewett Middle School, where he first started the avid program and did it all the way through high school, and he's been the president of his class every year, including this year he's president of senior class at Albemarle High School. The next time I met him, he was in our what we call the student cabinet. It's a 3rd grade through 12th grade advisory group of students that has a representative from each school. And I didn't recognize him, of course, when I saw him, because hadn't seen him very often. And it was just, like I said, he's a wonderful young man, very bright, and just has such a bright future ahead of him. When he was given the opportunity to choose his favorite ACPS staff member to be photographed with, he chose Pearl Early. A lot of us know Pearl. I mean, I've known her for 15 years. When I first started out as principal at Albemarle, she was president of the African American Parent Alliance. She started a group. She was actually a teacher assistant at Sutherland Middle School with one student and came to Albemarle with that student. And when that student graduated, she stayed and is now what we call an educational support specialist. It's a classified staff position. And she started a program called Young Men with Great Minds, and she also is in charge of the only Virginia high school chapter of National Society for Black Engineers, and she runs a chapter at Burley Middle School as well. When asked about his favorite person, his favorite educator, Marquand said, "I chose Ms. Early because she is the most influential ACPS employee that I've worked with during my high school career. She was the first person I met in 9th grade, and now that I'm a senior, she has been helping me with the FAFSA, my transcripts, and even with any at-home problems which can contribute to my learning."
Well, at 6 tonight, Jewett Middle School revalidated as a demonstration school this week, meaning schools around the world can look to how it's helping first-generation and underrepresented students succeed in their college years. CBS 19's Michelle Beck learned more.
Hey Dan, the program is called AVID, and today I spoke to a student who spent the last 7 years with it and is now prepared for the next big stage of his life.
This is Marquand, Albemarle High's senior class president, athlete, and soon-to-be first-generation college student.
So I've been accepted into a few colleges, and I'm still waiting to hear back from some.
And this is AVID, which stands for Advancement via Individual Determination.
The big things we focus on are, time management, study skills, study habits, how to study.
It reaches out to students typically underrepresented in colleges. Marquand says it's helped him feel ready for college.
The study habits are contagious. You can teach your friends and it'll keep it new for you, and also it'll just help you grow.
He got his start in a classroom just like this one at Jewett Middle School. Jewett belongs in the 3% of schools worldwide with AVID programs that can model what AVID's all about.
We're doing a memoir project.
Amanda Vogel's lesson plans go well beyond how do you write well.
How do you take notes? How do you take the information the teacher gives you and really make it your own so that you can remember it? I mean, some of these foundational skills, if you're lucky, you might get at home, or maybe you learn from an older brother or sister, but not everyone has access to those skills. We're trying to make it really explicit and embed it.
After 7 years in the program, Marquand now has those skills and more.
AVID really tries to hone in some of those leadership skills. So at this point, he is a well-respected, well-liked leader in our school.
He's even got some words of wisdom to the middle schoolers at Jewett.
When you get to high school, it'll be a sudden change with the workload and the social life, but just never sway away from who you are as a person.
With those values and the skills, Marquand will do just fine in college.
Amanda Vogel, the AVID teacher, told me what really makes a difference is touring colleges. It's how her kids can imagine themselves attending and belonging there. Reporting live in the studio, Michelle Beck, CBS 19 News.
I think society is changing for the better because Sadie and Marquand represent the best in all of our students. They really do represent what's best about all of the young people that we have in our schools. The videos that you watched were not just about students, they were about programs where the school board has made significant investment. Significant investment in the AVID program, significant investment in the ESSA program, beginning to make piloted and trial investments in our academy structure. Those are all bets that you're making, that if you invest in a few boats, small boats, that when that tide comes rolling in, it picks up everybody. And it doesn't have to be about winners and losers, and it doesn't have to be about some people getting resources and other people not getting them. When you direct that attention to a few, they all prosper. They all prosper from it. We have invested in them, and they grow our investment to help others by breaking down barriers and lifting their peers. We invest in individuals, and they help us lift all the rest. That's beautiful. I think society is changing for the better, and it's changing slowly. We can accelerate and help the change through our focus on equity. And here's what equity means in Albemarle County Public Schools. When we have equity, we will know it because we will have ended the predictive value of race, class, gender, and special capacities on student success by working together with families and communities to ensure each individual student's success. We will get what we focus on. When we focus on equitable opportunities for all of our students, and when we treat each student as likable and smart and capable of productive struggle with relevant work, we will have better results with all of our students. In closing, I'd like to thank the more than 1,000 people who responded to our online budget survey, the community and staff members who talked with me during my 16 listening tour sessions about how we can do better, and our school board and board of supervisors for their support of our students and staff. I firmly believe, and the numbers support that belief, that as a high-achieving school division, we have a strong foundation in place from which to lead our county to greater success in the years ahead. I'm even more convinced this will happen because of the breadth of innovation and the sense of purpose reflected in this funding request and its new proposals, and because of the talent and dedication that comprises our team. I see that every week in classrooms across our 25 schools. Albemarle is rising. We have important work to do to keep it on that upward glide path and to be the catalyst that is making our county more prosperous for all. All right. So here is our budget schedule coming up. We've got several work sessions. If you just want to take a few minutes to look at it, school board, before you get your budget notebooks, you'll see that we'll be starting right out on the 22nd with a broader overview of the budget. Today, I covered the priorities that are strategic. You'll get the bigger picture in terms of a budget overview, compensation and benefits, growth, and all the growth in enrollment in special populations. And then we will start hitting strategic objectives, and we'll get to that first one, to engage every student. We'll talk about the high school center expansions, JROTC program, the equity specialist expansion, and FLES staffing. So we'll start digging into the weeds at that time. And the last slide is on questions and comments. And Maya will take all the questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Good job, Dr. Haas. Thank you, Dr. Haas. That was terrific. It gave us a lot to think about, and I know when we get our books, we'll have a lot of work to do. And so as a reminder, the one slide that was up there, we have special work sessions on the next two Tuesdays, the 22nd and the 29th. And then our regular work session is next Thursday, the 24th. We have one other bit of business tonight. Rosalind, are you going to talk about this?
I don't have much to say. Just as a reminder, at the last meeting, Lindsay Snoddy presented staff's recommendation for the architect for the high school center number 2. That was for information, so it's tonight for action. Our recommendation is to approve the selection committee's recommendation for high school number 2 and authorize staff to begin negotiations with the recommended firm, which is Quinn Evans Architects.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? There you go.
Thank you.
And unless there is any other business tonight, we are adjourned.